Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Students, so I'm going to resume my lecture. So just before I've explained rational method, and another method which is more accurate than rational method is called SES curve number method. So SES method, which is developed by Soil Conservation Service of United States. So, because what is the use of this SES curve number method is by knowing precipitation and by knowing the type of soil and land use and antecedent moisture conditions and type of by knowing catchment characteristics and rainfall characteristics, we can estimate excess rainfall or rainfall excess. Because once rainfall excess is known, then we can calculate the runoff value. Because we can calculate the runoff by using unit hydrograph for a given storm in a given catchment. But unit hydrographs are mostly not available for many catchments. Only for very few catchments which are important because of urbanization, cities nearby and development taking place in those areas, unit hydrographs are available there. But many remote catchments, unit hydrographs are not available. So there's only method to calculate runoff in that catchment is SES method. So this is they derived it experimentally in many different catchments with different soils and land cover and moisture conditions. So finally they will develop some curves and also given equations to calculate rainfall excess. You see this figure, this is precipitation versus time. So hydrograph is given. Hydrograph is rainfall intensity of that storm. So there is a initial obstructions or initial losses that is represented by IA, because this water will not contribute to the runoff. And then there is a potential infiltration curve. You see the potential infiltration curve. So below the potential infiltration curve, the rainfall below the potential infiltration curve that goes into the soil as infiltration. So that water will not be contributed to runoff. And there is a above the curve that is represented by PE, that is excess rainfall. So this excess rainfall that contributes to the runoff. So total rainfall P, that is equal to PE plus initial losses plus infiltration losses. So FA represents infiltration. So effective rainfall P is equal total rainfall minus infiltration minus initial losses. So in general, these are the assumptions. Okay, excess rainfall, that is always less than total precipitation. Then after runoff begins, infiltration is less than the infiltrated water is less than or equal to capital S. S is the maximum storage, or this is the maximum water taken by the soil. This is the actual water absorbed by the soil. Fa is the actual water absorbed by the soil, whereas capital S is the maximum water that can be absorbed by the soil. So once runoff begins, because infiltration will be less, so Fa less than or equal to capital S. Potential runoff, that is a maximum amount of runoff. That means infiltration is negligible. In that case, the potential runoff is P minus Ia. So the ACS assumption is Fa by S is equal Pe by P minus Ia. So actual infiltrated water or infiltrated water volume divided by the maximum storage, that is maximum water can be absorbed by the soil, is equal to excess rainfall divided by potential excess rainfall, that is P minus Ia. So this is the ACS assumption. So from this assumption, they have calculated excess rainfall, that is P is equal P minus Ia square by P minus Ia plus S. So finally they have given these equations, that is excess rainfall equal to P minus 0.2 S square divided by P plus 0.8 S. So S is that is water, maximum water that can be absorbed by the soil, but this S value is unknown quantity. Okay, so we don't know the S value, we know only P value. So to compute excess rainfall, we need to calculate this storage value S. So ACS method gives S is equal 1000 by Cn minus 10. So Cn is curve number. So curve number is function of land use pattern and type of soil, etc. So once we know the curve number, we can get storage value. Once the storage value is known, then we can easily get rainfall excess. So they have given these formulas. Apart from that, they have also supplied curves or plots. Okay, so without these formulas, we can calculate excess rainfall using these plots. So if you see this plot, it is there are three variables. On x-axis is cumulative rainfall, y-axis is excess rainfall, and these lines represents curve numbers. So curve number is I, means curve number is high, that represents impervious soil. That means there is no infiltration. When the curve number is low, that means the infiltration capacity of the soil is very high. So maximum water from the rainfall goes to subsurface flow and groundwater flow. So by knowing the precipitation and by knowing the curve number, we can calculate the excess rainfall. So it is not here. So they are given. I'll show you. So this is they have classified soil into four types: Group A, Group B, Group C, Group D. Group A is deep sand and deep loess and silts. Group B is shallow loess and sandy loam. Group C is mainly clay, and Group D is soils that well significantly wet. So depending upon these groups and depending upon the land use, we can get the curve number. So this table is given by SCS, that is Soil Conservation Service, and this table is given for normal conditions. They are divided depending upon the antecedent moisture conditions. They divided soil into three types, that is class 1, class 2, class 3. Class 2 refers to normal conditions, whereas class 1 that refers to dry condition, whereas class 3 that refers to wet condition. So wet condition means when we are considering a rainfall, so before that there is another rainfall due to which the soil is fully saturated, then that soil condition is classified as condition 3, whereas condition 2 is normal. Okay, I mean the soil moisture is at normal, whereas class 1 means is completely dry and soil moisture is less. So for once they have provided a table for normal conditions. Once we get curve number for normal conditions, then we can correct it for either dry or wet conditions. Okay, those formulas are I'll show you those formulas. Okay, so the formulas are given here. Okay, this is a curve number for type 1, that means dry soil, whereas curve number 3 that for wet conditions, and within the dry and wet conditions, normal conditions, they divided again two types depending upon antecedent rainfall, dormant season and of a crop. So growing season, that means this is a season where the crop grows very rapidly. Mainly we can say that during the January to April, that is considered as a growing season. Because after the growing season, there is a pre-harvest that is called as dormant season. So in dormant season, so depending upon the rainfall during the dormant and growing seasons, that land which can be classified as either 1, 2, 3. So dormant season is pre-harvest season, and growing season is where the crop grows rapidly. Generally, the dormant season is considered as like in December, or where the climate is very cold, or climate is very dry. I mean, climate is very hot. Those are dormant seasons. So in between, when the temperature is moderate, that represents growing season. So because the curve numbers are defined for normal condition, that is antecedent moisture condition too. For example, I will show one example from that. See here, one example is given. Compute the runoff from 5 inches of rainfall on a 1,000-acre watershed. The hydrological soil group is 50% group B and 50% group C. So already we discussed about what is group A, group B. See, group A is sand, group B is, you can see, loam, sandy loam. Group C is clay, and group D is, it's a clay with fully wet. So from this question, the soil is 50% group B and 50% group C, and antecedent moisture condition is 2, and the land use is given 40% residential area and 30% impervious, and 12% residential area, that is 65% impervious. Then 18% of the area which is paved roads with curbs and storm sewers. Then 16% of open land with 50% of fair grass and 50% good grass cover. 14% are parking lots. Okay, so this is the land use pattern, and we have to calculate the curve number for this combination of all these types of uses. Okay, see here, it is 40% residential and 30% impervious. So further, is a residential, and just hold on, it is not showing the actual numbers. I marked numbers, but it's not showing here. So first is 40% residential area and 30% impervious. Okay, so it is mainly the soil is B and C, and you can see here impervious is residential. The average percentage impervious is 30% impervious. Okay, so you can see here 30% impervious. Further, for the curve number is 72 and 81. And second, where the residential area is 65% impervious, for that it comes out to be this 85-90. Then 18% is paved roads with curbs and storm sewers. So for that paved roads, okay, here, so the paved roads with curbs and storm sewers, for type B the curve number is 98, and for type C curve number is 98. Then 16% is open land with 50% fair grass and 50% good grass cover. So open land with grass cover. So here the open spaces, okay, so with grass cover is 50% to 75%. Further for type B soil it is 69, and for type C soil curve number is 79. Similarly, 14% parking lots with plazas, schools, and so on. So for this, for plazas, for regarding the parking lots, it is given here. Okay, so for parking lots, all are impervious. So for that, it is given the curve number is 98. Already I explained, when the curve number is high, near to 100, that means that is impervious. Okay, that means whatever the rainfall occurs on those surfaces, that turn out to be surface runoff. So now the curve numbers are identified. Similarly, their percentages are given here. Okay, you see here it is 40% of residential area. Within that, 20% is type B, 20% is type C. So it is 20% type B and 20% type C, and their curve number is 72 and 81. So the cumulative product is 20 into 72, that becomes 1440, and 20 into 81, that becomes 1620. Similarly, for residential area, 65% impervious. Here you see 12% of residential area, that falls 6% in type group B and 6% in group C. So the percent is 6% in group B, 6% in C, and the curve number for B for that residential area is 85. For C it is 90. So we have to tabulate like this percentage of the area and corresponding curve number for that type of soil. So once this table is formulated, then the product is 4038 here, 4340 here. Okay, so we have to add this 4038 plus 4340, that becomes 8378, and divided by total percent, that is 100%. So the curve number is, the average curve number is equal to 83.78. Okay, so once curve number is calculated, then once curve number, it is this is type 2 antecedent moisture condition. Okay, so once curve number is known, I close this window. So once curve number is known, then we can use this formula to calculate storage. S is equal to 1000 by Cn minus 10. So once storage is estimated, then precipitation is known, then storage is estimated. So by substituting those two values, we will get excess rainfall. So here there is another example. Rainfall is 5 inch. Area is 1000 acres. Then soil is class B is 50%, class C is 50%. Antecedent moisture condition is type 2. Look at this, because the SES curve table that is given for antecedent moisture condition type 2. Suppose in the question, if his antecedent moisture condition is either 1 or 3, then we have to account for that antecedent moisture condition. So the curve number for 1 and 3 are given here. So by knowing 2, we can correct it for antecedent moisture conditions 1 and 3. So in this question, land use is given here, 40% with 30% impervious cover, 12% with 65% cover. It's the same example as earlier. So total that table is formulated here, and from this one we'll get curve number is equal 83.8. So once curve number is known, type 2. Okay, so for type 2, for any type of antecedent moisture conditions, so S is given by this formula. So S is equal 1000 divided by 83.8 minus 10. So once S value is calculated, we can substitute here, and the P value is given in the question, that is equal to 5 inch. So we can easily calculate excess rainfall. So once excess rainfall is known, we know the area of the catchment area. So in this question, that is given as 1000 acres. So we can easily calculate runoff volume due to this rainfall in this catchment area with this given land power pattern. We know urbanization changes the runoff characteristics. So what happens? You see this plot, which is rainfall rate versus time, and these lines are potential infiltration curves. You see, before urbanization, there is a lot more infiltration, but after the urbanization, there is a less infiltration. So this hatched area, that is change in the infiltration caused by urbanization. So the infiltration decreased due to the urbanization. And what happens? Infiltration decreases. Whatever rainfall are taking place, that becomes excess rainfall. So when excess rainfall is high, then runoff will be high. So you can see that before urbanization, the hydrograph is flat. That means it is slowly, the peak attaining it after the, slowly it is attaining peak, but with urbanization, peak is attained very quickly, and as well as the peak, the value is very high. You see that there is a difference between the two curves, and you see that this area, that is after urbanization and before urbanization, this is the positive runoff volume added, this is the negative runoff volume, and the total is net positive runoff volume is high because there is a lesser infiltration after urbanization. So we can clearly see the effect of urbanization on runoff hydrograph. So nowadays we are calling this kind of quick peak hydrograph is flash flood. We are calling them as flash floods because within no time, even for a small rainfall, runoff volume is quite high. So that we can see in many areas, many cities. Whenever even for a small rainfall, there is a flooding in many areas. That is because of the urbanization. So runoff value.
Sir,
Yes.
can you show me the previous slide once?
This is the one.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, in this case, like, what do you mean by urbanization? If urbanization there?
Urbanization means paving roads, constructing buildings, constructing airports, constructing parking lots, and developing
Okay.
recreational areas, grounds, etc. All of these are called urbanization.
In the first graph, which you have shown that additional excess rainfall caused by urbanization.
Yeah,
Sir, actually,
because what that
when
means.
we have urbanization, definitely like there would be decrease in the rainfall, right?
No. See, we are not considering the effect of urbanization on the rainfall. Okay, because that is anyway unknown value that we are not considering. We are considering the same amount of rainfall is taking place before urbanization, after urbanization. But due to this, there is a certainty in the decrease in infiltration. Okay. So right now,
So like,
don't.
but actually, sir, what is the thing which is in between those two graphs? Infiltration before urbanization, infiltration after urbanization. The slashed one. What
Yeah,
does
you
actually
mean that
mean?
hatches that hatching? No, I'll explain
Yes,
this.
sir.
See, suppose there is a agricultural land. So if you see in many cities in India, a few years ago, the suburbs are of agricultural land. So do you agree? So
Yes.
during the rainy season, the rain catched by this agricultural land that used to be, of course, some water was going to run off, but some water that is seeping into the ground and it is adding to the groundwater. But now those agricultural lands, because they are converted to become residential areas. So once residential areas, because the houses and roads, all these, their parking lots, etc., they are all concrete material. So rainfall now it is not able to infiltrate, and that is coming to the stormwater drain. Okay, so have you got, see in this figure, the top figure, these are potential infiltration curves. Okay, so the top curve, that is the infiltration before urbanization, but after urbanization the infiltration has come down. That is a bottom curve. Because of this impervious nature of these constructions, water unable to seep into the ground, and that added to the surface runoff. Therefore, you can see this peak runoff after urbanization. So that the water which should have gone to the infiltration, but that added to the surface runoff. Therefore, this extra water is shown here. Did you get? Did you understand now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was confused because of the statement which was written, the additional excess rainfall caused by urbanization.
No,
That's
see,
it.
here we are not considering the climate effect of this urbanization on the climate, okay? Because that we do not know. Because some areas, even after urbanization, the rainfall is increased. So we don't worry about that. But
Yes,
there is 100% guarantee when the urbanization taking place, the infiltration goes down, okay? So
yes.
that was shown here. So next, we are this runoff. It is direct runoff and base flow. So runoff is classified as direct runoff, base flow. So direct runoff is which immediately comes to the outlet, whereas base flow it takes a very long time. So direct runoff that includes surface runoff, interflow, and rainfall on the channel surface. Whereas base flow it means delayed interflow and groundwater flow. So this is the hydrograph. Nothing but plot between discharge and time, discharge versus time. Okay. Generally, the hydrographs are shown like this. There is a rainfall hydrograph is shown, then resulting hydrograph is shown. Because even for this rainfall hydrograph and this hydrograph, the time axis is common. Okay. This y-axis is different. For hydrograph, it will be in centimeters or millimeters, whereas for flow rate, it is discharge per meter cube per second. Next figure, which shows very clearly, this is the hydrograph, and hydrograph, see, once the rainfall starts, okay, the rainfall starts somewhere here. So once the rainfall starts, the flow rate increases at the outlet, and the flow rate reaches peak. When it becomes peak, because all the water from all corners of the catchment that reaches outlet, then the flow quantity at the outlet will be maximum. So then the peak occurs here. But before the peak, the rainfall has stopped. Okay, so therefore the amount of water reaching the outlet decreases. So therefore there is a recession limit. And you see, although rainfall is stopped, even before the rainfall there is some flow, and after the rainfall is some flow. Because this flow is called as base flow, it is contributed by the groundwater. Because you see, many places the streams are like a few meter deep, depends upon the uh, geometry. Depending on that geometry of that location. Sometimes the stream will be like 6 to 10 meters deep. Okay, but in those area, water table may be only just 4 meter below the ground. So therefore, the water table is exposed in the stream to the surface. So the water comes out from groundwater. So that is this base flow. So this curve, it is divided into three parts: rising limb, then there is a crest segment, then recession limb, and we can very well mark where the rising limb starts. Okay, this is an inflection point. A is an inflection point where the slope of the curve changes. That is starting point of rising limb. Generally, it coincides with the starting of the rainfall event. Then there is a B. Okay, so where again this is another inflection point where the curvature of this curve changes. So then there is a peak C, and after that there is a decreasing amount of water contributed. So the water is decreasing, and that again the curvature changes at D. That is another inflection point. Then all the water of the rain already contributed, so there is no more rainwater contributing, and only groundwater is contributing here. So therefore another inflection point at E. And for surface runoff or excess rainfall, we are interested only in runoff. We are not interested in base flow. Therefore, we need to separate base flow from the hydrograph, because this hydrograph, which is combination of base flow and surface runoff or direct runoff, and we are much more interested in direct runoff. So I'm going to discuss the methods to be used for separating base flow. So these are elements of hydrograph or rising limb. So as the storm continues, more and more surface water from the distant parts of the catchment reaches the gauging station, and discharge increases. So big discharge usually occurs after some time of the occurrence of the storm. So in this particular figure, AB is rising limb. The shape of the rising limb depends upon the storm properties and basin characteristics. Okay, because if the storm is the rainfall intensity very high, then the slope of the rising limb will be quite high. If the rainfall intensity low, then rising limb slope will be less. basin characteristics. If suppose basin is flat, then rising limb slope will be less. If the basin slope is very steep, then the rising limb slope is high. Then basin lag. So basin lag is the time between the centroid of the hydrograph and peak discharge. Look at the figure. This circle in this hydrograph, that is you can say it is centroid of precipitation. Okay. And peak. Okay, the time between the centroid of precipitation and the peak of the hydrograph, that is called as basin lag. Basin lag. Basin lag also depends on catchment and rainfall characteristics. Then there is a crest segment BD. That is up. These BD points can be marked by marking inflection points. Then there is a recession limb. So recession limb is then there is no more inflow to the stream due to the surface runoff. Then the discharge decreases with time, so that is called as recession limb. So recession limb extends from point O to point E. So your recession limb starts from point D to point E. And the shape of the recession limb also depends upon catchment and storm characteristics. So by using a continuity equation for a linear relationship between storage and outflow, we can develop equation for recession limb, that is given by Qt is equal Q naught T power T minus T naught by K. K is decay constant, and QP, this is, let's say this is a peak of flow at time T naught. T naught here is a peak flow rate, and T is time from the peak. So it should be QP and TP in this equation. So the recession curve, apart from that equation, it is also represented with another equation, that is Q is equal Q naught into K power T. Q naught is a peak or discharge, where Qt is the discharge after some time interval T. Kr is the recession constant. So this is also another equation. So this is generally the recession limb is an exponential curve, so which can be represented by different equations. Okay, this is another way of representing this recession curve. Qt is equal to Q naught e power minus AT, where A is this decay constant, or which is also called as recession constant. So A is function of Kr. Kr is recession constant, and recession constant is a function of surface storage, interflow storage, and base flow storage. Okay, so in any hydrograph, because we know the discharge versus time, okay, we know the values of discharges and time, their corresponding times. So we can easily plot the recession limb, and we can get this Kr value or decay coefficient, whatever the equation we fit for the recession limb, that coefficient we can obtain it by just plotting that on a log paper. So I'll stop it here. In the next class, I will resume with remaining portion of this surface water or surface runoff. On Monday, I will finish the surface runoff chapter. Okay. So I need 1 more hour to finish this class. So today I post one assignment that is for subsurface flow. So So for today's class, if you have any questions, please let me know. So no questions.
Sir, assignment submission deadline for 4th would be?
Okay, but today it will be assignment 4. Today is Tuesday, so I will give you time up to uh, Friday. Okay, so you will have enough time. And I'll try to give your marks for the first 3 assignments in next 2 days. Okay, I'll upload those marks in Moodle, or otherwise, yeah, I will upload an Excel sheet on Moodle so you can check your marks. Okay, thank you.